Hello, everyone. Oh, okay. So hello, everyone. As I introduced myself earlier, I'm one of the team members at Agrimetrics, trying to build a really thriving data marketplace for data providers and consumers to share their data in a way that allows them sufficient confidence to and trust to be able to host their data with us, and then consumers to use our marketplace to get hold of their data so that they can use that data in a much more intelligent way by combining other data sets, and therefore get interesting insights into what is happening in the agri-food sector. So we are using semantic knowledge graphs, which are knowledge graphs that have been annotated with meaning or semantics, as we will see in my presentation later on. Agrimetrics is about exposing data to stakeholders in a way that makes them self-describing. So data that comes along with meaning. And this is extremely important if we want to enable a digital platform where providers and consumers can communicate seamlessly with sufficient trust. So as Anna gave a brief introduction to Agrimetrics, it's a publicly and commercially funded organization. So it's part of the funding is coming from the government, but the hope is that in a couple of years we'll become fully self-sustainable, and we'll be able to get enough commercial value from the agri-food marketplace to be self-sustaining. So we enable organizations to safely monetize their data while making it easier for data consumers to access the information they need. And we will look at the architecture later on. Basically, the idea is not just data, but intelligent data. So data that is driven by insights. When we onboard data on our platform, we clean the data. It goes through a number of machine learning processes so that data is made available in a form that is most useful for the stakeholders in this sector. And the idea is to create a very sustainable, a productive, and a thriving ecosystem by accelerating the movement in this area using data-driven innovations. We are constantly thinking about new and easy ways, trustworthy ways to expose data and make it available to our consumers in a variety of ways. So as a dump, as in the form of APIs, through visual interfaces. There's not just one mechanism through which data is made available. There are several options available to consumers of data to get hold of the data they're interested in. So how do we do that? Okay, so couple of things that we focus on. First of all, like I said, discoverability is important. And this is where the semantics also play a major role. So Agrimetrics is striving to make data findable. So to provide a catalog of data, all sorts of data, weather data, logistics, models. We even provide a place to hold your machine learning models so that our platform can run those models. Manage your data. So once you have onboarded the data on a platform, you have the capability to assign permissions to your data sets so that they can be shared only to those organizations and individuals with whom you want to share the data. So it provides a private data exchange platform for maintaining trustworthiness amongst the sharing and the providing parties. And what this does is, by providing a platform to find data and manage data, you are able to successfully monetize your data. Providers put a lot of effort in gathering valuable data, and there has to be some added value, some added commercial value to that data that can be exploited by the providers. And Agrimetrics provides you a platform to do exactly that. And in the process of doing this, we also do a lot of other things, which is this feature of data enablement, where our team, the experts in our team, people like data scientists, plant biologists, plant scientists, all these different members of the team, they understand the data, they assess the data that has been hosted on a platform, and they add their own value to it by providing interesting data modeling capabilities and data integration features. So this, the idea behind Agrimetrics is to basically enable a very dynamic and a very sort of thriving ecosystem of exchanging data within the agri-food sector. So some of the things that we have come across when we talk to customers, both data owners and data users, they come with certain requirements. So for example, make my data discoverable. I want my data to be seen by a large number of organizations, a large number of individuals, maybe people who are working in the livestock sector, people who are working in crop biology. And we worked with all these different kinds of stakeholders in the agri-food sector. And they come with their diverse requirements. From a data owner perspective, you would want to make your data discoverable. You would want your data to be, the usage of your data to be built appropriately. You want full control on who's going to use your data, to whom your data is visible. Sometimes you want really fine-grained control. So you want certain parts of the data to be visible to only certain authorities. And of course, the data should be presented in a really nice way for it to be more saleable and more attractive to the consumers. And in the process of doing all this, of course, reduce the maintenance cost so that the provider is not always having to make a lot of effort when the data set he wants to be exposed changes. And this happens very often. Data sets change. More data is added to a particular data set. The maintenance cost should be low. On the other side, for a consumer of the data, you would want to very easily find the data that you are interested in, find data which is of much value to you. So if you're working in the livestock sector and you're looking for, let's say, cows, you want to be able to find data sets that, for example, provide you with experimental evidence on lactation data for a cow, let's say. So discover related and comparable data. If I'm looking for crops, maybe I'm looking for wheat, and I want all those grains which are closely related to wheat. I'm looking for precipitation, and then I want also data related to humidity. So not just the data that I'm interested in, but also other data sets which could be related or could be interesting to integrate and derive more value from. Easily pull data into my workflow. So when I'm consuming data, it shouldn't be yet another process for me. It should be just a matter of calling an API and getting the data in the format that I need, and pay for just the data I need and learn how best to get the value. Sometimes people have a lot of data, they can get hold of a lot of data, but they don't know how to use it effectively to get the best value out of the data. And that is where the team at Agrimetrics come into picture. That is where they can advise you on how to best use the data that is available through Agrimetrics so that it is most useful to you. Now, how do we do that? This is just a very high level overview. There are lots of detailed processes that are involved, but just to give a very high level idea, a data owner comes with a data set, adds the data set to the data catalog that we have in our marketplace. Once the data set has been registered, the catalog, he can set access permission on who can see it and use it. And then what we do is, through this semantic annotation that I'll be talking about in a bit, we actually make the data easily discoverable. We add a lot of relevant metadata around the data set that provides meaning to the data. So anyone looking for, like I said, rainfall can find data sets about precipitation, right? So this kind of linking between the terms, identifying what a data set encapsulates, what the data set holds, and what is the meaning of the various things that the data set contains. Once this is done, data, obviously, once it's in the catalog, it becomes discoverable for any consumer to come along, log in into the data catalog and find the data sets of interest. Then when they have discovered the data set they want, we make that data available to them via APIs. We have a business model for that. And finally, after consumers start using a data set and we gather insights from how many people are using it over a number of time, and this can be then fed back to the owner to basically tell them about how people are using the data and what they can do to improve the data set they are exposing, what is it that people really need. So it's a iterative cycle, and what it does is it makes a lot of the processes involved in providing and consuming data quite seamless and really straightforward. So FAIR is a very important part of what we do at Agrimetrics. We want to make sure that our data is findable, not just by unit, value, entity, but also by the concept. The concept that is the metadata around the data. Data is accessible through APIs. It's reusable because we are publishing through our data marketplace. And because the data set that we provide is linked data, it is in a form that enables data integration. Therefore, you can just pick up a data set that we expose through our API and link it with other data downstream, so it becomes interoperable. So we place quite a huge importance to making our data sets fair. So what is currently available? So on the data catalog we have data sets about soil, field, crop, weather, natural capital, pesticides. Right now, a lot of the data sets are UK based because this is primarily a UK company, but now we are bringing in data from Ethiopia, we are bringing data from India, everywhere, anywhere where there is a huge agriculture driven society, we are trying to get data from there so that it becomes more and more relevant for the people who are looking for such kind of data. Right now, a lot of our data is field linked. So field is the central point. So for a field, you would be able to know about the soil, where the field is, the location where the field is, the crop the field has grown over the last 3 years, the weather in the area, the other things around the field, for example, the natural capital such as water catchments, habitats, forest, all these things. A lot of our data sets have been acquired by paying a lot of money to really premium organizations such as Airbus. We get satellite data where we can get really fine-grained data such as the chlorophyll content of a crop in a field. Then we have field boundaries. And because we are getting a lot of our data from Airbus, we are actually integrating and exposing the Airbus data in a much better way. So we could also, for example, sell the data that Airbus is selling, but in a much more cleaner and a better way. And then, of course, as a lot of the data sets in the agri-food sector are gridded data sets, we can provide the raw data set as well. So normally what we do is we get the gridded data, we integrate it using our processes and make it available in a form that is more useful to stakeholders. But if someone desired the raw gridded data set, we could make those available as well. So we have a full-fledged catalog of data sets, and please do go ahead and explore. There is, as a free subscription, you can get a limited number of data sets available to you. So please do go and try the features available on our platform. So now coming back to the main topic of this talk today, which is about knowledge graphs. So we have, like I said, we have a lot of data sets, and we have structured them in using semantic annotations, using ontologies, in reference data, in reference knowledge graphs. So for example, we have a reference knowledge graph for soil textures, which is just about all the textures, all the possible textures of soil that you can have. And this is coming from literature, from domain experts. Similarly, we have plant species, plant protection products. Then we've also incorporated several standard reference knowledge graphs, such as the quantity, units, and dimensions, which talk about the various units that exist, the units of measurements, the way in which you measure quantities, And lately, we've also onboarded EPO code, which is a coding, a sort of a coding mechanism that has been, coding standard that has been set up for identifying the plant taxonomy, the plant biology and things like that. So basically what we have done is, apart from the data that we get from our customers, from our various stakeholders, we have also looked at the knowledge that exists in this sector. And we have created standardized knowledge graphs that people can use to link with their own data. And we do this on a regular basis for our customers. If we get data for a field, we look at the soil and the texture of the soil, and then we link it to the soil texture in the soil texture knowledge graph. So there's quite a huge variety of literature from the agri-food sector that has been onboarded as well on our platform. So some of the examples of some of the applications that we have built using all these data sets that we have aggregated and interlinked are an application called When2Go, which advises farmers on when to spray. So if farmers are looking to spray pesticide, they would like to know when it's going to rain so that they don't spray in that window. And this is an application that we did for BASF that gives farmers, when they provide their location and the soil in the field, we give them an indication of when it is safe to spray in the following 9 days. Oops. In the following 9 days. So, and then we have a Natural Capital Explorer, which is about exploring an area of habitat and looking at what is it that is available as natural capital in that area. So what are the water catchments, what are the priority habitats? And this is very important when, let's say, a council wants to approve a planning permission for, let's say, a building or a school, for example, to be set up in that area. And then you would like to know, is this encroaching on any of the natural capital? And then this application provides a really nice way of providing the council with that information so that they can make an informed decision on whether it's okay to approve this planning permission or not. So this is coming to the very high level architecture we have here. So this is the process which we follow to onboard a data set and to get it exposed via our APIs. So we have a data lake. The data lake has got all the raw data sets. We ETL the data sets. They go into the various stores we have. So we have a polystore architecture. Not all data is suitable for SQL. Some of the data goes in a graph database, other goes into an SQL, a lot of it goes into Elasticsearch. On top of those data sets, then we build REST APIs, and then we provide, depending on who our customer is, and if they need a nice user interface, we provide a UI to expose the data, and we provide APIs, right? So it's a very, very sort of simple architecture. The details are in, the devil is of course in the detail, and each of these processes is very complex, but this is kind of the high level architecture that we use to expose our data sets. Ontologies, semantic annotations that come along, that goes with all the data sets that we expose. Some of the design principles that we've kept in mind is that it should be big data driven, because we are annotating big data sets. So we are looking at lightweight schemas. We've been guided by well-defined external models such as the provenance model and other models, the semantic sensor network models. And OWL is a language, it's a syntax, I won't go into it detail, but OWL is a language for defining these ontologies. We don't use all the expressive features of OWL. We keep it really lightweight, and the focus is on the integration and the interoperability of the data. So data should be annotated in such a way that when it goes downstream, when it goes into the hand of the consumer and the consumer wants to integrate it with other data sets, the process is simple. So we don't use a lot of complexity in ontology design. We keep it simple. And this is like a typical ontology development life cycle. If we have to design an ontology, we first develop a data coverage model. The data coverage model is guided by the data itself and also the domain knowledge. So we discuss with domain experts, we look at the data, we identify competency questions, and then we build an ontology. And that ontology is then used to annotate the data that is exposed through our JSON LD API. And we have another API format, which is the GraphQL API. So it's a very organic and a very simple and a straightforward process we use. Just to give you an example of what a data coverage model looks like. So when we get hold of a new data set, we sit down with the data, the people who have provided us with the data, with the data and the domain experts. Like, for example, when we were working on a project, which was a project on cows, where we were gathering experimental data from cattle all across Europe. And then we had to expose the data sets to an API. And the things which were interesting for us were, for example, the animal, the observation, the experiment itself. So to start with, when we start building an ontology, we have this kind of a data coverage diagram that gives us an idea of what is it that we are annotating. And once we have that, then we start identifying the concepts that are of interest. So for example, in this soil ontology, what is of interest to us is a soil layer and a soil texture, right? So the basic flow is come up with a data coverage diagram. From the data coverage diagram, identify the concepts that are of interest to the people who will be consuming the data. So then we have, like, for example, we have a biological property of the soil layer, we have the chemical property of the soil layer, so on and so forth. Just to give you a high level idea of the process we follow. Once we have this sort of an ontology, and this is another ontology which is about data points. So where you talk about the temperature, the rain, the various things that you would record when you were recording weather parameters. So it would have a unit and a value, and it would have a dimension. The dimension would be you're recording precipitation, you're recording maximum temperature, minimum temperature, long-term average temperature, so on and so forth. And once we have all of this, then Then we, okay, this is another example of a geospatial ontology. So once we have all of this, then we can start annotating our data sets. And using the process that I just showed, we have come up with several ontologies, completely driven by the data that we have seen, the knowledge from the domain experts. So it's really rich in the coverage. As you can see, we have ontologies for agriculture plant, for soil, land cover, plant protection, predictive models. We've also worked quite a lot with the group at INRAE in France on the livestock ontology that they have. We have extended their ontology. So it's not just about building new ontologies, it's also about looking at what's available out there and how can we add more value to that. So some of the external ontologies and services that we have used in the process of building our ontologies are AgroPortal, BioPortal, AgroWalk, and these are quite well-known names, in terms of ontology repositories for the agri-food sector. And once we have all of that, then we can now annotate the data and we can expose it through our APIs. So what you see here is an example of a REST API. You might not be able to see the detail here, but basically the terms that you see here are all the terms which have come from the ontologies that we have built. This is again developer.agrimetrics.co.uk. Please, by all means, go here, subscribe to an API and use this to see how we have exposed annotated data, semantically annotated data as JSON LD through this API. And there's one other API that we have, which is more a point-and-click API. So this is a GraphQL interface, and this is very, very intuitive. You just have to point and click. So if you want data for a field, if you want the area for a field, the average temperature, the crops grown, you just need to select the things of interest. The query will be formulated for you. You need to run the query and you get the results. It's really, really simple and intuitive. And then we have made sure that the ontologies that we have used are aligned to the GraphQL schema, because GraphQL is a different language. It's not the language that we use to write our ontology. So we make sure that those two are completely in sync with each other. Just to summarize what I have discussed, told you about so far for Agrimetrics, what we want is we want to add value to the data in the agri-food sector. There is a lot of data out there, very, very useful data, but because it's not well annotated, it's first of all hard to find. And even if you find it, it's not in a form that can be very easily used by people and can be used in applications. So Agrimetrics is a source of data, good quality data. It provides you a mechanism for permission data exchange. So in a trustworthy way, by providing access control on all your data, very fine-grained access control, you are basically in control of the data that you are exposing through our platform. And as a source of expertise, like I said, that apart from just exposing your data, we also come with a good set of experts who can help you get the best value out of your data. And for consumers, it's a much more easier way to consume. These are just some of the people we are working with on various projects. We have several projects running with various partners, and that was pretty much it from me. And I've not been able to look at the chat, but if there are questions in the chat or otherwise, I'll be very happy to take them. Thank you very much for listening to me today.
Thank you, Monika. It was a great presentation, and I think it is very challenging for all of us. Particularly, we have here people from Biodata or Elixir Portugal who are research infrastructure. We also have colleagues who are researchers. I don't know if there is anyone from the industry, but I think that we have enough variety so that this discussion that will follow can be helpful for everyone. So I open the floor for questions. Is there anyone who would like to start?
Well, I can start. Thanks, Monika, for the very nice presentation. I didn't have the opportunity to attend to the SME forum in March, so it was really great to have the opportunity to listen to your talk now. And I have a few questions. I think the concept is quite interesting of Agrimetrics. And I have a few questions related to, for instance, the type of customers you have, because you have customers that are both data providers and data owners.
Yes, we do.
And data users, I mean.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so most of your customers are industry, or you mentioned INRA in France, but
yes.
Is it common to have customers from the public domain?
Yes, so I don't know if you've heard of Cranfield University. Cranfield University does a lot of, Cranfield University in the UK. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of research in this area, and they are our customers. They actually get data from us, even though they are an academic institution. Yeah. So we have a good mix. Also data scientists, people who are working in this area, who are researchers, but they need good quality data. Mm-hmm. So they subscribe to our APIs to get this integrated view on a field, on livestock. Data integration is very hard, and we do it. So people like to take advantage of that.
Okay. Yeah. And just also another curiosity, because I work mainly with forest species.
Oh, nice.
You are focused mainly on the food crops, and do you have also, because forests have additional challenges?
Oh, yes.
Probably no. So have you had the opportunity to deal also with the forestry data, for instance?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. You know why? Because we just got funding for a project called Forest Mind. And Forest Mind is a project which is looking at how the crops that are grown by actually getting rid of forest, how they are affecting the ecosystem in the forest itself. So what is the impact on the crops, and what is the impact on the forest, on the trees, and on the tree canopies in the forest? So this is going to start in the next few weeks. And then we will get all the forestry data. We're in the process of collecting all of that from Guatemala, actually, for coffee plantations, and from Brazil for soy plantations. So all that will come.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yes.
And another question is, what do you think are the biggest challenges to meet the expectations of your customers for you as Agrimetrics?
Yeah, so we have a lot of because we have such a huge variety of customers, people want data in various different formats. Some like it UI driven, some like it as a CSV table, others like it in some other format. And sometimes, when you try to mangle data, when you try to convert it from one format to the other, it's not always easy. That's a technical challenge. But the social challenges are people are not really willing to share data. I mean, for example, we buy data from trustworthy sources, but if I were to ask a farmer to upload their data or for us to link to a farm management system, it's a tall order. It requires a lot of convincing, because this is why, because people are in general not very trustworthy in terms of sharing data in this sector. That's what I've seen. And the platform that we are building now will give them this capability. So we are working on something called an agri-food passport. So farmers, farmers need certification for the fields, for the crops they grow. And the project that we're working on currently will provide farmers a seamless way to connect their farm management system to our platform, and from our platform to a certification body, right? So the Agrimetrics platform will be a hub to connect two different parties, the farmer and the certification scheme. So that is going to be very interesting, because then we're going to see how many farmers actually buy into this. So the biggest challenge is, getting the buy-in from the community.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
From what I know.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if we have other questions from.
I can make perhaps a few more technical questions. So we also had that experience in biodata, actually, of getting people to share their plant data. Even among researchers, it's not straightforward.
Yes, indeed.
So actually, my field of research is also around knowledge graphs and semantic technology. So I was very interested by your presentation. I was wondering, how do you do semantic data integration? Is it manually, or do you have any sort of automation to annotate the data with your ontology terms?
No, it's completely automated. So for example, when we get data as a CSV, we use Sparkle Generate. We have the ontology. We just write a Sparkle script to annotate the data, and we get triples out of it. So, and sometimes we have to write bespoke scripts as well. It really depends on the shape in which we get our data.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question. So do you ever have to deal with bad quality data, and what are the challenges? So how do you handle that?
Bad quality data is a given. So in 99% of the cases, the data will be bad. So we just take that. We just very, very few customers really provide us with a data set that we can look and say this is gold. So it's always, there is a process of data cleaning, whether through Python scripts, sometimes through Excel mangling. It's always this this first step in the process that we have to carefully judge, and it varies from one data set to the other, and that is not something that we can automate, because it really depends on who's giving us the data, how much of manipulation is needed. Sometimes it's just a case of correcting the spelling mistakes. Sometimes there's lots of garbage in it. Yeah, so it varies, but the data cleaning is an important step. Yeah.
And for ontology design, do you have anything automated? So do you ever consider using ontology matching techniques to kind of combine existing ontologies?
We have used some in the past, but not very rigorously. Most of it is just something that we do in our heads. We look at the data, we look at various different ontologies and see which one is the best fit. I don't think so that a completely automated process will be very successful. You need to make it interactive.
No, for sure you need user interaction, but this is actually something I'm looking into, is to automatically build a knowledge graph by combining existing ontologies.
Yeah. A lot of research has been done. Yeah.
You need user input somewhere in the process for sure, because no automated process.
Exactly. And the thing is, for a company, we cannot spend a lot of time doing our own research. So we can spend some time looking for a tool that does that. And sadly, we haven't found any, a tool that can do this in a way that is useful to integrate as a part of a pipeline. So it's much easier and quicker to get a manual judgment of it and then go from there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Is there any other questions that the audience would like to bring us?
If I may,
yes,
I can have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm Monika. Thank you for your nice talk. I'm just wondering, how do you deal with this multiplicity of species? Because in your graphs analysis, you use different species, for instance, for the environmental, or if you do food stock, you begin with the grasses, and then you go to the other species, you go to the cow. So how do you deal with this multiplicity of species? Because in our case, we are used to use only one species. So it's a crop-related species, very specific, and we are not using several species. So even among plants, it's difficult to have an environmental analysis of all the species.
Yeah, so, well, I don't know what you mean by multiplicity of species. We always try to find relationships between things, right? In the world of semantic annotation and linked data, relationship between entities are the central point. They are the first-class citizen. So, for example, what is the relationship between a plant and a cow, right? The relationship goes through a field. The field is growing a certain crop, and maybe the cow is grazing on that crop. So, when you say multiplicity of species, what I understand from that is that you are asking me, how do you relate these different things in the data set that we encounter, right? So we have one data set about fields, another data set about cows, another data set about the weather. And then if you were to ask a question, so what was the weather in the field this cow was grazing? Can I answer that question? I can answer because I have linked all the data using relationships. For example, the location of the cattle, the location of the field, the weather in that location, right? We look at all these things and we come up with a query that will then tell me, okay, at this point in time, the cow was grazing in this specific field and that was the weather at that point. Now, for example, for the plant, for the relationship between species as far as the plant taxonomy goes, we have EPO codes, right? So EPO codes identify the codes of the various plant species. And then some of them, like we have a data set like AgroWalk. And AgroWalk has actually related various things in the agri-food sector quite nicely. So we look at those kind of data sets. I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe I didn't understand you properly. But what I judged from your question of the multiplicity of species was, how do you connect all these different species, and does the connection give you interesting answers to difficult questions?
Yes,
So,
and the other thing is about the concept. You mentioned in slide 15 that you will find a concept of interest.
Yes.
But the concept of interest could be in different among experiments or among assays, or
yes.
So how do you choose it?
Oh, we talk to the domain experts and with the person who provides us the data to get the best understanding of which is the concept that represents this data point, right? We are not domain experts. I'm a computer scientist by training. I cannot say, of course, I've learned through experience quite a lot of things about the agri-food sector, but I still cannot say for sure whether a certain concept can be used to annotate a data point. That has to be a domain expert. So we rely on their expertise to tell us, yes, this is a concept that fits this particular data point from this experiment. So for example, when we were looking at experiments on cows, we had the nitrogen level, the phosphorus level in the milk, and then we had to look for useful concepts that would annotate the various measurements. And then we just had to sit down with them and do that exercise.
Yeah, but one concept that is not useful in one experiment or assay can be useful in another. So you missed that data, or you stored all the data?
All the data, whatever data is, whatever data is given to us. So it's a closed world in the sense that we only consider the data that has been given to us as the source of truth. Anything outside that would probably not factor in, because you can have a lot of information in the world, but for us, our world is that those 3, 4, 5, 6 or 10 data sets that have been given to us and all the various data points in them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ines. Is there any other question that the audience would like to bring to Monika? If not, I have one. Sure. I would like to ask your advice for something that, so we are a research infrastructure, and we have this eagerness to share our knowledge with companies. Yes. However, at least in Portugal, it is still very difficult to pass the message that sharing data is beneficial. Usually the mindset is that data sharing, making our stuff available is jeopardous for the business, because we will lose control and we will give our colleagues the gold.
Oh, yes.
So I think that we may have a role to play in order to contribute to change this mindset for Portuguese industry. Can you give us an advice?
If I may add, not only industry, but also research. Researchers also have those prejudices. Those concerns. Yeah.
Yeah. So it really depends on how much authority the data owner has on their own data, right? And also, you would probably want to publish data in a fair way, which is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And then once fair comes into the picture, then the scene slightly changes, because fair data sets have to be published in a specific way. They have provided the publication guidelines as well. So I suppose if we can put forward a case study that shows that sharing is actually going to be beneficial for everyone, and the way to do it is to take 1 or 2 use cases, and those use cases, end-to-end use cases, will basically convince, first of all, you or the organization wants to make this sharing of data sets. They'll convince you, as well as the people who are doubtful about why data should be shared. It'll convince both the parties that there is actually value in that. And this doesn't have to be a very elaborate case study. It can be really very, very small case studies. This is what we did at Agrimetrics. The initial applications we built were really, really small with low volumes of data. The point was to show that if you integrate data, if you share data, sharing data will enable data integration. Data integration will help answering complex questions, because putting data sets together is a hard task. I can tell you that much from my experience. And once you can share data, and then that shared data can be taken by people and integrated in a way that shows value. Individual data sets if you share individual data sets on their own, it won't add much value. But the collective intelligence, the collective knowledge is just unimaginable, the amount of value it adds. So I think the message should be not just sharing data, but sharing and integrating data. And that I think will make a lot of people interested.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I don't know if there is any other question. If not, thank you very much, Monika. This Ricardo, would you like to?
I was just going to ask one question, sorry.
Yes, please.
I don't know how much you can say, Monika, but at the beginning you said that in the process of like preparing the data for it to be accessible to the users, that you used machine learning or artificial intelligence processes as well. So I don't know how much you can say about that. What sort of processing?
So, for example, some of our data sets, they come to us raw, and we have a facility to host machine learning models. So, at the Agrimetrics platform is not just about making data available. You can also run machine learning models on our platform, and we have done that for our clients in the past. So, what happens is we get the raw data. We run that through a machine learning algorithm, a machine learning model, and the output of that is then annotated and integrated with other data sets to add value.
Okay.
That was the point there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then I would like to thank Monika for this fantastic talk and even better discussion. And thank you all for coming. Unfortunately,